Hi there. The goal of this tutorial is to look into user verifications. So this is an alternative way of authenticating your users. So you might have already worked through the key verification example, and this would cover the way you can authenticate users using a license key. However, in some use cases, for example, when your customer has many licenses, or if you plan to offer your application both through a web service but also through desktop application or a plugin, then it might be more convenient to authenticate them using a username and password. And that's what we're going to look into today. My goal is to use Python for this tutorial. However, this works in other languages as well. And the goal of today is to cover it on a brief level. And if you'd like to read more, I would suggest to review the article that we have here. You can find it by searching for user verifications. Alternatively, please feel free to reach out to the support. And yes, so let's get started. In the first part, to get this up and running, I'll show you that I have some example snippets in Python. So the goal of today is to first to create a user, just to show you the workflow of how that will be, for example, when you set up a registration on your end, and also the authentication itself. So how can the user obtain the license keys that they have purchased by providing your application with username and password? For this to work, there's one important part, and that is to create the correct access token. So if you click on your name and go into the access token section and then create a new access token, you'll see there are two new permissions: user auth normal and user auth admin. And the simple rule here is, or a recommendation, and that is for the client code. So anything that will be running on customer's end should only use the auth normal permission. So you shouldn't give it the admin permission. However, on your end, for example, on your backend where you would create new user accounts for your customers, then it'd be more appropriate to use the admin permission. So for this tutorial, I'll just create one with the admin permission. And however, just so you know for future, that if you want to authenticate your users on the client side, you should only pick the user auth normal. I've already created the access tokens here, so I'm not going to do it again. However, let's just see the steps of how it would be working on your end. So the first part here is the registration. That's when you set up a user. So let's call this user test2, and then we have password, and then we can optionally also provide an email address. So I'll comment everything out that is not necessary for this code. And then let's see what happens next. So yes, I think we should probably also print out the result one, just to see how it works. So Python, and then it's test3.py. Username already exists. Yes, I think I've already picked that one. Let's try a different one, test123. That should not have been picked. Let's try again. Oh, okay, I didn't save the file. Here's the issue. So let's try again. User registered successfully. So now we've registered a new user test123. And if we go back to the dashboard, I'll go into the customer section. Yeah, let's leave this page, and then we go to the test customer and click on authenticate users using usernames. You can see all the users that we have created and the customer ID that they are associated with. However, the new user that we created, the test123, is not associated with the customer. And this is something you can do when you create a new user or register them. You can just provide the customer ID during the registration. However, if you've forgotten to do that, that's okay. Like, it's not an issue. So you can just use this associate method. So let's provide the username and then the customer ID which is the number that you can obtain on the customer page. So let's just make sure it's the correct customer. Yes. So let's comment this first part out and then see what happens if we associate them. And shouldn't forget to click save. User associated successfully to the customer. So now they're linked, and if we go back to the customer page again, or the user page, refresh it, you can see we've assigned this user to that customer. So essentially what that means is that you can now, when the user authenticates using their username and password, they will be able to, or like on your end and on the client side, you'll be able to retrieve all these licenses, and then its activation is normal. So you would use the same idea that is covered in the key verification tutorial to authenticate them. So let's see how that looks on the code side. We've associated the user, so let's go back and remove this statement and see what happens if we try to log in. So we pick this test 1, 2, 3, run it again, and as we can see, we get all these licenses, and we also get the various properties such as the state of the license, if there are any notes, features, but most importantly, we also get the product ID. And why this is important is because, for example, let's suppose that you, if we go back to the scenario where you have multiple products, and your customer can have multiple licenses to access each of those individual products, then when they log in into one of the products, you want to make sure that they actually have a license for that product in an easy way. So when you log in, you get this list. You can search for a license with the correct product ID for the product that they're trying to authenticate. And if they have it, you can then activate that license just as you would do if you would have asked them for the license key. However, this might be more convenient in those two use cases that we discussed. So the first one is where you offer your application through where they can both access it through a web service, but also through desktop application / plugin, or when they have multiple licenses. I'd like to end this tutorial with I'd like to mention that overall there are 3 ways of authenticating users. So the first one, like on the very basic level, is to authenticate them using a license key. So that would be, if you click, for example, on one of the products, it would be to authenticate them using those license key strings. The second way of doing it, of authenticating users, is through a concept called customer secret. So it looks like a license key, but when you authenticate them you can give them one license key. That's how they will perceive it. But in reality, that connects to their customer object, and then you can retrieve in a similar way all the licenses that belong to them. And the final way, the one we've been discussing in this tutorial, is to authenticate your customers using a username and password. So this allows you the flexibility of managing the whole experience yourself, from registration to authentication, and also through the, for example, if they forget the password, there's also a way of restoring it if that's needed, both on the client, in the client application, but also on your end. Finally, one more thing that I would like to mention is that it is also possible to authenticate your users using a Cryptolens account. That's something we haven't covered today, but that's covered more in the tutorial. So, but this is more appropriate for the use case where you would like to control the whole user experiences yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, please let us know if you have any questions. Have a nice day.